Hi guys, welcome back to Mind and Seek. Thanks again for joining me. What we'll do today is we'll present you with something a little bit more different, as you can see. And what I'll be talking about is one of my all-time favorite philosophies called Taoism. Now Taoism, if you're not too familiar with it, it translates into the path, the way, or the road, depending on your own interpretation. Now Taoism, even though it sounds like it's pronounced with a D, it's actually spelled Taoism, and it was created by Lao Tzu. So what we will do today is I will present you part one of two videos that I'm going to make. I will present you with Lao Tzu's quotes, and I will break them down for you for clear explanation. So we will get right into part one, and I hope you truly enjoy this. The essence of Taoism is simplicity. What it teaches us is to completely unwire and go back to our natural dispositions. Lao Tzu and Taoism teaches us that the more information and ideas and assumptions and judgments that we compile, the less we know. In knowing this, we know even less. When we admit that we have a lot of knowledge, we've been schooled, we've been taught, this actually sets us back. In Taoism, learning defeats its own purpose. Taoism is not so much outside of us, yet it's all around us. Taoism is also part of us, it's within us. So the more we come closer to the Tao is when we come closer to ourselves, we realize our most purest, unhindered, unfiltered potential and reflect that through nature around us. So let's get started with these quotes. I'm going to read these off and explain them to you for clear explanation. If you could apply attributes to Tao, it would not be Tao. Now this applies to us labeling, boxing in concepts and ideas, and overcomplicating things, which is natural for us humans to do. And anytime we label something, we are actually hindering it and misunderstanding its true purpose. And this is the irony. We are not truly seeing this because we are so busy labeling, associating, and conceptualizing this. So this quote directly ties into us dropping these assumptions and notions and judgments towards things and not seeing them in a very overcomplicated, harsh way that we normally do, but see them through our intuition and our awareness instead. And that is how we could truly experience the Tao, through the limitless, the nameless, this unconstricted manner that we're so used to doing, is when we are able to let those things go and drop them, we are seeing the clear purity within things that are unhindered, and that is when we are actually getting that much closer to the Tao. So let's move on to our next quote at hand. Let me read the next one right here. Neither life nor death bring any changes to the self. Now this quote may sound a little confusing to most of us. How can something so dramatically physical, when someone dies, not bring any changes? Or, for instance, birth and death. Those are very transforming actions in everyone's lives. So when we ask, how do these not bring changes to the self? This is a very interesting and complex idea. Because what it's referring to, this is a Taoist perception, is that when we die, our egos die, our identities die, our physical bodies die. However, what is not dead, what transcends, is our spirit, our consciousness, okay, our awareness. And therefore, this is what it's relating to. It's relating to something that is so permanent, and that is consciousness. Consciousness is not a temporary thing. It does not have a beginning or end. It does not have a time limit. It does not expire. Therefore, this particular quote is relating to this idea that once we die and our consciousness is still there, it's released into the universe, it is forever boundless, it is timeless, it is infinite, and it's beautiful, and it's part of that universal force. So our next quote reads, "If you want what fate wants, nothing can happen against your will." Now this particular quote is strictly talking about resistance and control. So many of us are so caught up with our egos trying to take control of our everyday decision making. So when we let go of that control, it almost feels like we're helpless and hopeless and we're falling and we can't get up. So what this Taoist quote is suggesting, that life has a certain way that it will always unfold. And nature and Mother Nature and the cosmic force has power beyond what we can perceive. And things are going to unfold the way it's always going to unfold, and that's out of our hands. Now, for most of us to accept that, it's a very difficult process. And for us to surrender to the concept of being one with nature, going with the flow of nature, not against nature, we could get into this line of, oh, okay, we're not going to resist this and we're going to accept it with full hearts. Our hearts are going to be open to this idea. And it is a very hard process, like I said, to let go of that egotistical control. So this quote tells us to stop resisting and go along with this ride that we call life and accept the challenges that come our way, because that's what's going to shape our growth. That's what's going to shape our progress and lead us to our true purpose in life. Now, here's another quote I'll read to you. Social conventions lead you away from the natural way of things. Now, this one is pretty self-explanatory. Because we are so wired and taught that we have to behave, think, and act a certain way to be one with society, we have this monumental pressure and burden on our shoulders. And when we are taught those things, we automatically remove ourselves from the natural flow of living. Therefore, the more chatter that we experience within our minds and externally outside of us, the less connected we are with nature and our true potential. Now, this next quote doesn't need further explanation because it's pretty self-explanatory. So let me go ahead and read this one to you. There is no absolute right and wrong. People judge as right what they personally consider pleasant and judge as wrong what they personally consider unpleasant. Convincing others of what is right cannot be equated with teaching the truth. It is just teaching others to agree with you. It is not about putting an end to an error, but putting an end to opinions contrary to your own preconceptions. That is wonderfully put. So we will move right along, and I will go on to my next quote. This states, "To be perfectly pure except appearing not to be." Now, that quote was pretty practical and grounded. We can all relate to it. We all have this innate need and naturally want to be perfect at everything. Now, we all know no one is perfect. This Taoist quote pretty much explains to us, when we let that control go and that OCD and that perfectionist nature and see ourselves for the beautiful abilities that we already have, that we naturally have. That, in a big way, means we are perfect. So when we could stop being in this mindset and being in this competitive, one-sided, one-dimensional world of, I need to be good at this because society says so, or you put all this pressure and society puts all this pressure on you, that is not true perfection. That is not genuine, pure perfection. Pure perfection already exists in you. It is all there. It is a matter of us putting our walls down, our guard down, and seeing this, stripping our conditioning down, stripping our that pressure, stripping down those expectations from our families, friends, loved ones, society, and letting go of what society expects of us and really getting into our own rhythm. And once we really see the beauty of ourselves, that's when we are actually living in pure bliss and perfection. Let's move on to the next quote. Everything we perceive as objectively true in this world is actually personal and subjective. We are our own creators of our universe, and this all goes back to our perception. Our perception creates our reality. So what we think is the ultimate fixed truth is not that at all. This is subjective. It comes from our quality of our state of minds. It comes from our upbringing and the notions that we grew up with, and how traditions and how we were raised, and all this plays a big role in the result of this. So therefore, the lens that we see the world in is truly from our personal lens, which is also a very beautiful reality, that there is no big truth, there is no solid, this is the end all be all. It is a beautiful, limitless, boundless progression. Let's move on to the next quote. If you are able to see through the illusion, you are in heaven. If not, you find yourself in hell. Now, this one is not referring to any specific hell or heaven, as you guys already might have assumed. This is referring to if we could get past this cycle of suffering, the cycle of conditioning, right? If we could get past all of that, we could get to a place of bliss, which the Tao considers to be heaven. Now, if we continue in the cycle, in this routine that society is in, that we are chained to suffering, we are chained to unawareness, we are chained to jadedness and negativity, we find ourselves in hell. So that is pretty self-explanatory in that sense. So when we are living in a state of unawareness, unbothered by conditioning, we are living in a constant state of ignorance, and therefore that takes us to a place of hell. Our state of mind, our well-being, the quality of life equates to being in hell. Let's move on to the next quote. A human body occupies only a little space, but consciousness can reach to heaven. This quote is so beautiful. It goes back to what I said a few quotes back about how consciousness is limitless, it's boundless, it doesn't have a beginning or end. It is the most important, most vital, most crucial part of existence. So when we go past the earth and the material and our bodies, we come to a place of utter beauty, which I would call heaven, of how we could perceive that consciousness, that awareness, that aligning with the creative force. It is so heavenly, it is so godly, it is so beautiful and sacred. Let's move on to the next quote. It is healthy to know you know nothing. Pretending to know is a kind of sickness. Realizing you are all ill is the beginning of healing. The wise are sick of sickness, and so they are well. Now, this is a very interesting quote. There's a lot going on here. For one, we all can't help but get caught up in this notion of, I have to know it all. I want to get as much information. I want to be the smartest, the best, the fastest. It's a constant subconscious and conscious competition we live in this society, and we are bred to be that way, to be competitive and so forth. Lao Tzu is stating that those who are wise understand, they are humble enough to say, there's so much more I can learn, there's so much more I can know. They put that wall down. And when you put that wall down, you are getting out of this sickness. He's referring to the wall as this sickness, as this dead end, as this disease, this decaying disease. So when we want to let go of that disease, we have to say, we have to be open and humble and approach it in this youthful, naive state of mind where there's still so much beauty and vastness and infancy in this world, and it's only the beginning. And we have to approach life that way. And when we do, we are getting closer to the Tao, because the Tao is that purity, that innocence, that infinite progression, and we don't want to hit that wall. And that's what this quote is talking about. There's also another saying that goes, empty your cup. When we could let go of that arrogant notion of, oh, I know enough and this is all I need to know, we are pretty much building a wall. When we could drop that wall and empty our cups, as in realize that our potential is infinite. We are in progression. We have not reached our limit. We have not reached our full peak of potential yet, and we have a long way to go, and we are in this beautiful progress, in this process. We can let that wall down That is what this Taoist quote is pertaining to. This next quote is truly beautiful. It states, "Trying to understand is like straining to see through muddy water. Be still and allow the mud to settle." Now, this quote is truly beautiful. It is the epitome of Taoism for me personally, because it depicts how human beings love to overcomplicate and overanalyze and boggle down our minds with so much information and so much heaviness that we get drained emotionally, mentally, physically. And it pretty much states that if we were to simply just take a step back and come to a place of peacefulness and quietness and serenity and awareness and look at everything from a much simpler and clearer lens, we would see all the answers right in front of us. This Taoist quote is pretty much teaching us that there is no difficult answers. Everything is right there in front of us. We just have to come to a place of harmony and calmness and stand still for a minute just to see what's in front of us. That clarity is always there. We just have to be patient and still to witness it. Now, I will end this part 1 video with this last Taoist quote, and it states, "To know Tao, it is necessary above all to stop thinking." This is a great exit for this talk today. It pretty much relates to the external chatter that we experience internally and externally on the everyday basis. Most of us are not even aware that it's happening because we're so immune to constant visual, audio, and sensories, right? And that is something that we get used to and we are numb to it. This quote tells us, stop thinking, as in stop over-analyzing, stop complicating, stop making assumptions, stop judging the outside world, including yourself. So when you come to a place of that stillness and you realize the beauty within yourself and without yourself on the outside, and you can see the simplicity and the quiet nature of things around you, that's when you have reached a state of Tao. So I will end this video here. Thank you so much for joining me. We will pick up where we left off and do part 2 very soon.